We're continuing to ask ourselves this same question: does Black Lives Matter? And I hate to follow that up with another question, but you have to ask yourself, when does Black Lives matter? Does Black Lives matter only when a life is taken by a law enforcement official? Does Black Lives matter only when it's taken by a law enforcement official and it's a non-African American person that's responsible for that life? Does Black Lives matter only when it's in a mass form, like just something that just happened in Charleston, South Carolina? More importantly, does Black Lives matter only when the media says that Black Lives matter? Because the truth is, almost every 15 minutes in this country, a young person that looks like me, looks just like you, loses their lives to gun violence. And the reality of it is, the sad reality of it is, it's another African American that's responsible for that. So I have to ask you again, does Black Lives matter, and when does Black Lives matter? When do we decide to say enough is enough? When do we decide to say that we are going to raise the consciousness of this country and say that you will give us the respect that you are giving any other race? If you look at the rate of our incarceration rate in this country, African American males are incarcerated at a rate of 10 times more than any other race in this country. We have enough African Americans in prison to have influenced any election that we've had in the last 100 years. So you have to ask yourself over and over again, when does Black Lives matter? Does Black Lives matter only when we're rioting? Does Black Lives matter only when there's a high level of protest? Does Black Lives matter only when the politicians say that it matters? And the sad part about that is we continue to have these debates over and over again. In the most prosperous country in the world, and we act like we can't get it right. We know the answers. We know the answers. We just have to be brave enough to say that when you pick up a firearm in this country and you needlessly take the life of another human being, we have to be brave enough to say what the punishment of that is, and have to be brave enough to stand and say that no matter what, this is what we stand for as a nation, not only from state to state, state by state, but as a nation, this is what we stand for. Black lives do matter. I've dedicated my whole life to public service. I will continue to dedicate my life to public service. I am here but by the grace of God. Those of you that have followed my career know that I am from North Memphis. When I was a child, I saw a police officer kill a good friend of mine's father. It's an image that I'll never get out of my mind. Once I got into law enforcement, I vowed that that would never be me, nor would that ever be the image of any police department that I was responsible for. You look around this room today, the men that we are here to celebrate. You have done it. You are doing it. You're doing it in the right way. You're doing it at the highest level. Most of us just got through looking at the NBA championship. LeBron James says that he's the best player in the game, and I can start a pretty good argument in here if I said one way or the other. I'm not going to say one way or the other. But the thing about it is, you are great when other people say that you are great. You're great when other people recognize what you are doing. And the best thing in the world that anybody could ever recognize you for is for being a great parent. There are a lot of things that we can fail at. I can be a bad police director. Well, actually, I can't. The mayor won't let me. It's a lot of things that we can fail at. But there is just one thing. That is just one thing that we just have to get right. My wife and I talk about this all the time. We can get sideways with each other. She has this thing she always said, you better fake it till you make it. But at the end of the day, we will never fail in being parents. So when we go and we look at the answer lies within us. Not politics, not some policy, not some crime initiative. The answer lies within us. Until we as people make up our mind that we will not fail. We will not fail at the most important role that any human being could ever have, and that's the responsibility of molding and raising another human being. That's right. So I say to the young men that we are here to celebrate today. We are watching you, whether you know it or not. I have watched many of you. You have set an example, not only for me to follow. My grandmother told me something very early in my life, that you never know who's watching you. Everything that you do it to the best of your ability, because you never know who's watching you, and you never know who's patterning themselves after you. So the men that we're here today, apparently at some point you got it right. At some point you hit a home run. At some point you scored a touchdown. At some point you hit that three to win a championship. And for that, we thank you. And as I close, I just want to say to my wife that we've been together now for, well, I'm not going to say how long, over 10 years. I'm going to get it wrong, so I don't want to say it. But a great number of years. We've been for a long time. We've been together for a long time. We've traveled and we've done a lot, and we've given each other a lot of gifts. Birthdays, anniversaries, just because gifts. And yes, man, you got to do this sometimes, just because. But the greatest gift that she's ever given me, and I thought I was one of the toughest guys walking. I spent most of my career in violent crimes, homicide. I had chased some of the most violent criminals that this city has ever seen. And I thought that I was the toughest guy that God had ever blew breath into. But my wife gave me the gift of a daughter. And God does have a sense of humor. Because he says that God gives you what you need when you need it. My child came along at exactly the time that I needed a child. So I want to thank my wife and my daughter, I call her Mookie, for allowing me to be me. I told my wife when I took this position as director that when this gets to be so too much, all you have to do is say that I've had enough and I'll walk away. I've cringed because I've never wanted her to say that, but I just want to say how appreciative I am of you, of understanding who I am and understanding the calling that God has given me, and that is a calling of public service. Thank you all. I wish that you all have the rest of your Father's Day is as great as the first part of it. I can't wait to get to my mother-in-law's house so I can get the second part of my gift. That's my season ticket. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Director. Now it's time to honor our honorees. State Representative G.A. Hardaway, please come forward. We have certificates and a proclamation for each honoree. And if you'd like each honoree, you may say a word to your family and friends. Our first is Marcellus Gordon. Come on up, Marcellus. We have a certificate and a proclamation for you. And from the state, Representative G.A. Hardaway.
If I may,
Speak up.
good afternoon. Knowing that a lot of fathers are like the police director and ready to get out of here and go get the rest of their Father's Day booty or bounty or treasure. It only takes one to speak. Luckily, I'm not running for president. But what I'd like to do, with your permission, Mr. Chair, is to go ahead and read the proclamation language that will be issued to each of our honorees.